one of my favorite cartoons from a magazine called The New Yorker a very long time ago. This was like decades ago. Had two Zen monks um, who had obviously just finished a period of formal, quiet sitting meditation. And the younger monk is kind of lower than the older monk who's sitting on a slightly raised platform. And they're gazing at each other. And the younger monk has a kind of quizzical expression on his face, and the older monk is speaking, and the caption of the cartoon is, "Nothing happens next. This is it." So as we move into our final days of this mitigation retreat, I want us to really keep in mind what we're not only asking of ourselves, but offering to ourselves when we take our seat, whether it's for 10 minutes or 40 minutes of formal meditation practice or an hour and 40 minutes, so that we're not actually getting caught up in either trying to get someplace or feel some special something. But it's more like a willingness to be uh, present for the unfolding of life, moment by moment by moment, as it comes. Whatever thoughts arise in the mind, or emotions, or sounds from the outer world, or whether you're in a pleasant moment or an unpleasant moment, whatever's going on with the pandemic and your work and your family and the world, that this is a kind of cultivation of a kind of equilibrium that's independent of causes and conditions. Not that we aren't affected in some way or other by causes and conditions and have to honor them and go with the flow, but deep inside in one's own heart and mind and body, we can simply turn down the volume of all the chatter and the striving, and therefore offer not just ourselves, but the world, the full dimensionality of who we are. As if not only it was important, but it was actually the most important uh, offering that we could possibly make to the world, is to simply offer ourselves in our fullness, warts, pimples, everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly, so to speak. But when we stop judging it, then it's just our humanity. And we can align ourselves with kind of ethical intention that is, again, as I've been emphasizing from the very first day, I think, um, this sort of this Hippocratic uh, invitation that we offer to ourselves to first do no harm with our towards ourselves, and we can be the source of a lot of harming towards ourselves and towards each other in the world. And one of the beauties of mindfulness practice is that, how could you possibly know whether you're doing harm? In most instances, when a lot of the harm is subtle, or it's not necessarily all by commission, but a lot of it's by omission, how could we possibly know whether we are causing harm unless we are awake, unless we are aware, unless we're willing to catch what's coming out of our own mouths, even if it comes out, and see the effect in a flash across another person's face, or a contraction around the eyes, or these are qualities that really bear cultivation, which is the root meaning of meditative practice, is cultivation. What we're doing is we're cultivating intimacy with the full dimensionality and possibilities latent in being human, latent in having a very brief opportunity we call a lifetime to actually live our way into the magic, the mystery, the beauty, and the suffering that is part and parcel of this world, and to not contribute to that suffering or to minimize, because inevitably we will contribute to that suffering, but to minimize it and to be able to move back from it and to actually intend at least to not only minimize suffering, both in ourselves and others, but also maximize or optimize well-being, not merely for ourselves, but for others. And that's an art form. And this whole time we've been together, I think we've all been understanding that this is an art form that is a collaboration, is participatory. It's something we're all engaged in, not just, sort of robotically meditating to reduce our personal stress or to fine tune our own mind so that we'll be more productive or more effective or more relaxed or any of that stuff, all of which comes naturally out of the meditation practice. But it's, in some sense, the least interesting elements of this. The practice is really about a profound potential for liberating ourselves from the ways in which we are enslaved by our own desires, by our own grasping, by our own aversion and pushing away, and by the narratives that we generate in our own minds, which we don't examine carefully enough, as Aristotle pointed out a very long time ago, when he said the unexamined life is not worth living. And whether he got it from his teacher Plato or Plato got it from Socrates, I don't know enough about that whole lineage to know. But nevertheless, there's a certain way in which what mindfulness does without doing it as a doing is put the welcome mat out for the entirety of life. And therefore it examines itself, so to speak, in the attending, in the paying attention the way we pay attention, and the inhabiting of I've been using the term boundless spaciousness of our own awareness, only you can strike the our own of awareness itself as in some profound way the final common pathway, if you will, of what is unique about our species, or what identifies our species, Homo sapiens sapiens, and offers boundless possibilities. And they will not be diminished one iota when June 26th comes along and we are all waving at each other and saying goodbye. And I'm saying this in advance because it's inevitable that we're going to want to become nostalgic already, even in advance of something ending, and have feelings about it, all of which is fine as long as we don't get caught up in those feelings. Because the not meditating together the next Monday will be a profound meditation practice where we will all, by not meditating together in this way on Zoom, be even more completely connected than we are at this moment through Zoom. And when, I lead, retreats in a physical space for people, I will often say that the retreat, as it comes to an end, is the whole retreat, however long it's been, whether it's 5 days, 7 days, 3 weeks, or in our case, like it'll be 13 weeks. Those 13 weeks are like the kiss of these bells. The kiss happens very, very rapidly, but the reverberations go out endlessly. They endure, even when they become silent. In fact, the silence is the most powerful part of the whole thing. And so you'll notice this meditation, although I'm really happy to guide meditations and for various reasons and quite intentionally talk a lot in the guide a lot in many meditations because and invite you to drop underneath whatever it is that I'm saying because I'm trying to point to particular aspects of being that are very hard to actually uh, make available, make ourselves available to, so that while they're here all the time, very often we miss it because we're looking for something special and forgetting that the looking itself is special, the being itself is special, the attending itself, the ability to attend or to rest in awareness, it's insanely special. So we don't have to fill up the time at all. And so I'm just trying to invite us all to remember that these 13 weeks, when they come to a close, will simply be like one out breath leaving. And it will be followed by a new moment, a new in breath. And as long as we are continuing to practice and learn how to not only dwell in, but in some sense love dwelling in silence without any need for guidance and not even guiding ourselves, not which we do a lot in meditation. It's very easy to become like a sports commentator in kind of a football game or something like that, where the commentary is preventing us from actually watching the game. Sometimes it's good to shut off the sound on a basketball game or a football, soccer game or American football or baseball. Just watch the game. So with meditation practice, just be with things as they are. Of course, it's not so easy. It's only the hardest work in the world for us human beings until it becomes a love affair. And then, as I've been emphasizing again, quoting the Prajnaparamita, Heart Sutra, there's no place to go, nothing to do, and nothing to attain. Because whatever you're trying to attain, you already have it. Whether you want to call it your true nature, Buddha nature, sort of pure awareness, whatever it is, it's not separate from being human. But it's often eclipsed or obscured is the word that's sometimes used because the mind gets cloudy. And when things get really cloudy, it's hard for the rays of light from the sun to actually penetrate. And it struck me, I felt like I would like to share a couple of poems with you from the great Spanish poet who I believe won the Nobel Prize at some point, but Juan Ramon Jimenez won the Nobel Prize back in the early part of the 20th century. And here are two poems that speak to different aspects of what we've been practicing all along. And the second one, I think, is infinitely relevant to where we're standing now in relationship to the pandemic, global warming, the enormous centripetal forces that are pointing towards the absolute necessity for social justice, not just in my country, but everywhere, economic justice everywhere, because the costs, not just individual costs, but social costs, global costs, are simply too high for intelligent, heartful people to sustain or endure, and the pain and suffering that are at the root of it. So the first poem is called I Am Not I. I am not I. I am this one standing beside me, whom I sometimes manage to visit, but whom at other times I forget. The one who remains silent when I talk. The one who forgives sweet when I hate. The one who takes a walk where I am not. The one who will remain standing when I die. I am not I. I am this one standing beside me who I do not see most of the time, who I sometimes manage to visit, and at other times I forget. The one who remains silent when I talk. The one who forgives sweet when I hate. The one who takes a walk where I am not. How many times has your mind done that while we've been meditating? It just goes for a walk. The one who, and this is a very powerful assertion, the one who will remain standing when I die. We don't actually die when we die because the waves, our effects of having been here carry on in the hearts of all of us, each other, in community, in family, in society. So it is a certain way in which um, what Jimenez is pointing to is absolutely congruent with everything we've been doing for the past 13 weeks in terms of our meditation practice. And the whole question of the personal pronouns and strong identification around them. The one who will remain standing when I die. And incidentally, speaking of dying, maybe I've said this before, but in yoga, the corpse pose is the lying down pose that we assume, whether it's in bed or on the floor, lying on our backs with our hands falling away from each other, feet. It's called the corpse pose. And it's called the corpse pose for a reason, because it's actually an invitation to die now. Die now, not from COVID, not from any other kind of disease, but to die now to the narratives that we tell ourselves about who we are that are not true enough. And therefore be born or enter completely freshly into what's ours to enter into, which is this moment while we're lucky enough, fortunate enough to still be breathing, whatever the condition of the body. So the invitation, and of course, if you know anything about the great Indian sage of the last century, Ramana Maharshi, I won't go into that in any detail, but the invitation is like every time, we practice, however we practice, lying in the corpse pose, sitting, die now to those personal pronouns, which means simply wake up to what they are. And then here you are. Nothing happens next. This is it. The other poem is called Oceans, again by Juan Ramon Jimenez. And this, I think, has real added meaning at this particular juncture in our global pandemic, which is just wreaking havoc in so many different places. And many countries have actually done the right thing and gotten it under control. And when you look at the exponential curves that were happening in March and even February, Italy and Spain and France and Germany uh, have really, and South Korea and many other countries have actually completely brought the curve down and are opening up, with caution, but have brought the curve down. In my country, some states have managed to ride that wave and it's been very intense and brought the curve down. Other states, the curve is just going up and people don't seem to even care. So this is a very kind of interesting circumstance that we find ourselves in now. But as again, we've all been, I think, in agreement about if and when COVID, this pandemic is over, we, nothing will be the same. I mean, we're not going back to the way things were, in part because of what we've been through, what we've experienced, and how many thousands and hundreds of, in my country, over 100,000 people already dead, many of whom did not have to die had we understood how to do pandemics the way many countries in Europe immediately did. And we're still fighting that battle today. So there's a lot of craziness going on. And for those of us who are Americans or in North America, this is where the rubber meets the road in terms of the meditation practice is to attend very carefully to how we are in relationship because we don't know what the levels of risk are, but it's fairly important to assume that they are a lot higher than people who don't think that this has, any validity whatsoever are, saying and doing. So I think that we are not going back to anything, that we've uh, entering a completely new phase of life, and hopefully one where we will have all hands on deck on Spaceship Earth and do what is required to actually um, help the planet to and life on the planet. The planet's going to do just fine, whether it is life on the planet as we know it or not. But to actually ensure the well-being of life on this planet for generations to come, which is, really a selfless thing to do. I mean, to care about our children and grandchildren and our grandchildren's grandchildren, just the way we, in some sense, are the product of all those generations, many of them nameless before us. We're like, it's not so personal. I mean, if you've ever studied anything about molecular biology and molecular genetics, I mean, you could argue that humans are a kind of clever way, or all organisms are clever ways for the genes to pass themselves on. And that the genes are what's really driving the show and not the bodies that get together to mix up the genes. So anyway, here's the poem, Oceans by Juan Ramon Jimenez. I have a feeling that my boat has struck down there in the depths against a great thing, and nothing happens. Nothing. Silence. Waves. Nothing happens? Or has everything happened? And we're standing quietly in the new life. I have a feeling that my boat has struck down there in the depths against the great thing, and nothing happens. Nothing. Silence. Waves. Nothing happens? Or has everything happened? And we're standing suddenly in the new life. And what does that mean? And how are we to be in relationship to what was, the past, what is yet to come that we cannot even imagine, and the only place where we actually live and get to love or grow or change or learn or heal or anything else, which is right at this interface between past and future, and it's called now. Easily missed, especially since we've been watching for 13 weeks, how easy it is to get caught up in the thought stream. And if you think you're alone and that everybody else is this like phenomenal meditator that is never has a disturbing thought or a kind of destructive emotion or a kind of ego-filled kind of contraction around anger or fear, well, that's a nice narrative in its own right, a nice fantasy or fairy tale. We're human. And that's where all the beauty lies as well. And so as we move, as we grow more and more into this retreat, as it comes to an end, we realize that the real growing never comes to an end, that we're standing suddenly in this new life. How are we to be in relationship to it? What would the equipment be that we would need in order to handle the unknown effectively and be creative and take care of what needs taking care of with love and compassion? We've been exercising that muscle for 12 weeks, almost 11 weeks and 3 days now. And that will go on as long as the breath goes on, as long as you care about it. And that's, again, it's a love affair. But it's very important not to reify or idealize or romanticize the meditation practice as one more thing to do. It's not a doing, it's a being. And so I want to kind of just start an ongoing process of reminding you that if you don't have these sessions at whatever time they are happening every weekday in your lives, you still have the hour. You still have every other hour and minute and moment. And it's all the curriculum and it's all an opportunity to practice, 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 but not practice as a kind of rehearsal, like, the more you practice the violin or the piano, the better you get at it. It's not a goal-oriented practice, although we do grow and grow more proficient as we practice, but we basically give ourselves over to it as a kind of empty spaciousness of non-doing. And it might help if not only if you wake up in the first thing in the morning and kind of put yourself in the posture of the corpse, if you can, and finish the job, as we've said any number of times, of waking up in the morning, truly waking up. Finish the job. Can you feel your hands? Can you feel your feet? Can you feel the whole body lying here breathing? Can you see already what's on your mind? Can you see that you may be anxious before you even jump out of bed? And can you not become a prisoner of that anxiety or that fear or those thoughts in the mind? And it's a yoga. It's a not it's a working with the boundary conditions all the time, stretching into them, leaning into them. So it's not about getting a result. It's you are the process. You are the result. Nothing happens next. This is it. And there's one more Zen cartoon from the New Yorker that I'll throw in now just for fun, which is again two monastics, monks or nuns, who've obviously just finished a fairly intensive, long period of quiet sitting. And one looks at the other, and the caption underneath is, "Are you not thinking what I'm not thinking?" So that doesn't mean there won't be thinking going on. It means that we are not attached to our thinking and idealizing no thinking. So the real meditation, is often spoken of in the Tibetan tradition, at least, as non-meditation. Life is the real practice, 24/7, 24/7. That's life is the laboratory, investigating the nature of our own minds and the nature of our relationships with each other. So I think I'll leave it at that for now. There's so many things have come up in our dialogues and in our small groups that have been absolutely wonderful. Just incredibly moving to me, and I'm sure to many of you. And I want to, from here out, really, if anything, simply savor them even more and how precious the conversation is and the inquiries that we are um, catalyzing with each other. And I'll just say, because MJ mentioned this yesterday, that there was some kind of a barrier to uh, getting professional training in MBSR because of the cost. And it came to me early this morning as I was practicing that in the old days, the older I get, the more I guess I find myself saying, in the old days, uh, the first training of other MBSR teachers, which I did in the stress reduction clinic, um, the first 500 people to go through it went through the training for free. We gave it away because it felt too precious to charge for it. And if it really is a love affair, then it really does need to be free in that way. Then something happened in medicine. I don't even remember what, because so many things have happened in medicine and the economics of medicine in my country since then. And we just had to charge for it in order to keep it alive. And so we did. But then there's a kind of tendency for things to get more and more expensive. And the more MBSR becomes like a popular kind of thing, or you know, a smart career choice, which is not the greatest motivation for actually coming to mindfulness, is like, a smart career choice because you'll make money doing it. Uh, Sometimes these training programs, because they're meant to be professional training programs on a level with all sorts of other things, they wind up charging a lot of money for it. And it costs a lot of money to run these programs globally out of a center. But it's also true, or it better be, or we should drop it all and change it immediately, in part because of what's going on in the streets of all of our cities in the United States, that we really need to rethink access to these kinds of precious teachings because they really do need to be free or as free as possible for people who don't have the wherewithal to actually um, cover the costs that are often being charged. And I just want to say that because I really feel like the spirit of this, as I understand it at least, has always been that of profound generosity and being able to make uh, education kind of professional training, if you will, um, a um, a love affair too. And one of my colleagues once said, who is trained in, education, that and this goes for training MBSR teachers, that it's not a smart career move. It's not like, oh, just find out how to do it and then teach out of the book or teach out of some algorithm. In class one, you do this, in class two, you do that, in class eight, you do this, because you'd miss the whole thing. The real curriculum is not in any book. It's not in any curriculum. The real curriculum's in here. And so unless there's a confluence of that, uh, you could give up professionally being an MBSR teacher because you'll miss the whole thing. And that's a form of violence to then lay some kind of mechanical trip on other people. And all MBSR teachers know this or should know this. Um, but what education or professional training is really about is igniting passion in people for the Dharma in this case, for the profundity, the multi-dimensional profundity of this practice as a pure gift. And it's not like filling up the mind with a curriculum, but allowing the curriculum to arise, and the deep root meaning of the education from the Latin educare is to draw out, to draw forth what's already in us. So a good teacher just recognizes uh, your wisdom and helps you to manifest it in a way that is skillful and um, allows it to resonate with people so that it will continue to propagate itself, like, again, a virus, like a contagion, that education, learning should be contagious. And love of the Dharma of meditation practice, it's not a catechism, it's not a philosophy, it's not a belief system, it's not any of those things. It's a way of being that has to be lived into. And we can't put any kind of price on that. So I just wanted to say that in response to MJ from Miami yesterday, Miami-Dade County, and because this is a big topic among MBSR teachers now, one that I'm not that involved in because I'm not involved in training MBSR teachers, uh, but one that I care about deeply so that the ethic of it really does um, transcend um, professional transactionalisms around money and delivers the heart of what MBSR, as far as I'm concerned, has always been when it's really MBSR. And that goes for MBCT when it's really MBCT, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy as well. So, wow, I've said a lot, and so haven't left that much time for comment or questions, but let's see what we can do. And as you know, I'm often willing to run over the time limit, since who made the time limit? I mean, we did. So we can, and we're all still, I think, pretty much stuck at home. So what's another 10 or 20 minutes, and if you have to leave, of course, you have to leave, but we'll see. But that's enough for today.
Wonderful. Thanks, John. Ahmad, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. I'm asking you to unmute. Do you see it? Wonderful.
Hello, John. Hello, Soren, and hello, everyone in the community. And thanks very much for the opportunity. Um, I'm originally from Iran, but I live in Switzerland, Geneva. So to give you a little bit of background, I was exposed to the MBSR course 7 years back at my workplace. And since then, I was doing that a little bit on and off. But then since almost 2 years back, I started doing that more regularly. And last year, I started an academic course, actually program in the Bangor University as the
Oh
part-time
yeah, yeah.
master's program in mindfulness, and I'm doing that. And then this community actually and this retreat was really a great opportunity to feel belonging and interconnectedness, the whole community, which is a great advantage. So I have actually a question on your definition, John. You call it operational definition of mindfulness on non-judgmentally part of that. Because I was also, I myself wonders, and when I also asked that question, don't have.
Start over again, Ahmad, because your voice just started to break up when you started saying the
Oh,
question.
yeah, so my question is about your operational definition of mindfulness,
Hmm.
and that's on the part of non-judgmentally. So, of course, we all makes meaning out of all the inputs, sensory inputs that we get. So we always doing judging and meaning cases. So I had a bit of difficulty understanding that non-judgmental part of it. So how that's possible. And a few days ago, actually, when I saw the documentary of my year of living mindfully, actually, you were interviewed and you were saying that that's the kicker. And by non-judgmentally, you refer to not judging our judging that comes. So it sort of added another layer to that. So I just wanted to, for you, please to elaborate a little bit on that part, on that non-judgmentally part. And because still I can see the judging comes
Okay,
every
well,
moment.
listen, I get it. And I'm so glad you asked this question because a lot of people have trouble with that. And they also think that non-judgmental means that you're unethical. It's okay to be unethical, that, someone's killing somebody else. Well, I mean, I'm breathe in, breathe out. I don't care. And it doesn't have anything to do with that. The reason I articulated the working definition, the operational definition that way is it's like a Zen koan. So it's not like going to tell you exactly what it is. It's going to require you to go through exactly the process that you're going through, but you can't go through it merely with thinking because thinking will never penetrate the thing. So first of all, what it means is that to be non-judgmental and to not judge all the judging means that you're going to have plenty of judgments. You sit down, take your seat. We've all seen it for the past 13 weeks, 12 weeks. You sit down, you say, I'm not going to have any judgments. And, everything's a judgment. I like this. I don't like that. He's too long. He's talking too much. He's not talking enough. I mean, I'm uncomfortable. My back hurts, whatever it is. And it's like, it's always, judging, 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 judging. So what it's really inviting us to do is notice how judgmental we are and then not judge that and then let go. So judging in my vocabulary is like a binary. It's 0 and 1, liking, don't like, don't like, black, white, want, don't want. Okay, that's what like a judgings are. I make a distinction between judging and discerning. Discernment is a kind of clarity around all sorts of shades of black and white, all sorts of gray, you know, all sorts of nuance around um, how children behave or what people do to each other, or all of that kind of stuff, so that we don't fall into a dualism of this is good, this is bad, zero, one. Do you know what I'm saying? Because that way we dehumanize each other and we can even dehumanize ourselves. So the invitation behind that working definition, so to speak, or operational definition, is to really cultivate discernment and around every aspect of the nature of one's own mind and what it produces in thoughts, sensations, impulses, consciousness, the whole range of human experience, and not build any kind of narrative around it at all. Okay. But to see, to discern suffering and the causes of suffering from uh, somebody during the past few weeks used the term sukha, as opposed to dukkha. So the sort of sweetness or the beauty or the non-suffering nature, of reality. So that's it's a very, very big definition, but it's something that if you only think about the words, you'll find all sorts of reasons to not like it. And you'll also say, well, if I'm not judgmental, then it is okay for people to do bad things to other people, and I should just breathe in, breathe out, and let go. And that's not, well, of course, what it says at all. And it's one of the reasons that we're emphasizing over and over and over again that the cardinal principle is to first do no harm and to actually recognize how much harm we do. Even in our own minds, we're creating harm to ourselves and others, never mind our actions out in the world. So I can't thank you enough, Ahmad, for raising your hand and somehow getting chosen by Soren because, um, well, this is the power of a koan is that, it really, there's a whole universe in there about what is the nature of mindfulness. And I didn't want that universe to be collapsed by cognitive theorists or cognitive therapists so that it's just one more thing that you operationalize in a linear way, and then you do it to or on your clients, who I would call victims of something like that, rather than engaging in the love affair itself. And this is an art form, and there's no one right way to do it. It has to come through you as the student. And I'm sure that the people in Bangor are teaching it that way because, it's coming from a very deep place in those folks. I know that because I know many of them personally.
Thanks very much, John.
Thank you. Did that satisfy you? I mean, does that respond to your concerns or the reason for asking the question?
Yes, basically when I explain it, and then I can see there is a layer to that. So which is not in the, or at least I don't see it in the first like one sentence definition of mindfulness. So it's basically, it says non-judging our judgment, or knowing our judging and then trying to be non-judgmental.
Yeah, it's meant to be provocative because we're talking about the Dharma.
Mm.
It's infinitely profound. And clinical psychologists and other health professionals tend to want to have like very linear, easy to understand definitions. And the trouble is, you can't understand mindfulness with your thinking mind, no matter how smart you are, no matter how great a scientist you are. And so that definition is really meant, and it's one reason why a lot of people criticize me for it, because they don't actually understand that it's a koan and that you cannot get it by thinking about it. You have to actually practice and let it do you, so to speak.
Yes, thanks so much.
Thank
Very
you.
happy.
Yeah,
Well, John, one more.
let's go for one more. If you're up for it, I don't know about your.
Well, John Bashu is also here, so it'll work out fine.
Okay.
Work out fine. Helen, surprise.
Oh
I'm
my
gonna
God.
unmute now.
I'm emotional. Oh my gosh.
You're not really called. We're just bugging you. You're really, you don't get it. No, I'm joking. Go ahead and take your time.
Oh,
Hi there.
my heart is gonna blow
Take
out
your-
of my chest.
Take your time, really. So,
Okay. Um.
where are you calling from?
Okay. Well, that's a little bit of my background, but I'm originally from South Korea. And I was a psychiatrist there, and I decided I'm too burnt out. I feel like gray concrete. My life is collapsing. And I had just one or two words. Awareness is big in psychiatry, and all of my patients and me, we have no awareness. We're just going circles, thinking, like what you've just said. You know, the cognitive, the thinking mind in health professionals. We want to fix it. Like pop medication. I just say, oh, see you in a few weeks, you'll be fine. Side effects, doesn't matter. But then it wasn't really working for me. It wasn't fulfilling my heart. And one more, just awareness and enough talking. And then out of the blue, I just thought, oh, mindfulness. I don't know. I heard about it. I hear it's great. Maybe I can go on a sabbatical with mindfulness. So I brought myself to UC San Diego Center for Mindfulness.
Mm-hmm.
I've met great
Steve
teachers.
Hickman.
Oh, yes. Very lovely man. He actually helped me come. And a lot of great teachers, lots of good programs. And I learned a lot. And
Are you there now?
yes, I
Oh,
quit
you
my
said-
job. I quit my job in Korea. And then
Yeah.
I just said, no more.
In other words, you actually listen to your heart?
I followed your directions, thinking, at first I thought, oh, I'm gonna get this down in 1 year. I'll go back to Korea and I'll share it with my patients and my colleagues, and that'll be good. I can do it. I'm good with white knuckling stuff.
Right.
And then I realized what a profound thing I found, and my heart was saying, if you go back, I'm not going to go with you. So
Your heart said that to you?
Yeah. And it told me that I'll regret it when I'm 60. I'll regret it when I'm 70 if I don't stop now and look and take care of me and my family. And so I'm here in the pandemic. I left everything. So I brought my son and my husband back home, but we're just stuck here, two of us.
Right.
And I'm in this big journey. So I'm in San Diego. That's what I wanted to say. And my question is, I have been so cognitive and so stuck in my head, always doing on autopilot in a pressure cooker. And then I couldn't stand it. So I feel like I'm a racing horse. And then this racing horse decided to jump over the fence because there was a really nice, spacious field. And I land myself in the field, and I'm sort of unlearning and learning, and it's a big jungle. It's so confusing sometimes, and sometimes I don't know if I'm even going the right direction, or it's just all confusing. I feel like a toddler, sort of learning life for the first time. And the question would be, how do I really get close to my being, my authentic self? And because I'm just getting comfortable with being, with doing nothing, and that.
No, it's not doing nothing. It's non-doing. Be careful with that distinction.
Okay, sorry.
No. It's easy to fall into that, but it's a very, very important distinction.
Oh, thank you.
that non-doing is not doing nothing.
Oh, yeah. But it's so strange for me. It's just so strange, and I just I don't know where how to dance or trust or but you have all these nine fundamentals and I go back to them over and over and tell myself that I this is all good, you know, being in the not knowing and it'll take me somewhere and
Well,
that's
as long as you're not causing harm,
mhm,
suffering. I mean, you're stuck, right? And so you're stuck between Korea and the United States, between, wherever you live in Korea and San Diego, and your past and what you care about now. And so it's perfectly fine to not know what the hell you're doing. I mean, not only is it perfectly fine, it's like it's fantastic because that's where imagination, creativity, and real transformation lie, and that can be of tremendous benefit not just to you, but to the world in whatever way who you have been up to this point interfaces with who you are discovering you are now. And then that will be your gift to the world, is will be you, whether you wind up doing psychiatry here or in Korea, or you wind up not doing psychiatry at all, or whatever, at the moment you don't know. And
I
that's,
don't know.
can it be okay to just be in the not knowing and see what it has to teach you, because you're there anyway. So if it's okay, then it becomes the love affair, and if it's not okay, then you can easily fall into anxiety and depression and thinking all the
Mm,
time.
mhm.
And but it sounds to me, just from our brief conversation, that your um, instincts are really healthy, really healthy.
Well, it's all thanks to you
Well,
and all the seeds you've spread that have landed in San Diego and at the Center for Mindfulness. And
yeah, if you do go back to Korea, let me suggest that you get in touch with a wonderful, wonderful friend and colleague of mine, Hei Young An. I don't know if you know him or not.
I'm reading his translated version of your book right now,
Okay.
and I've heard of his name, through, but I think I needed to find out all the way, come back to my 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 original country and my ancestors or whatever history, because I didn't know you had a Korean master or teacher, or I didn't.
Yeah, I was very, and I love Korea,
Uh,
and the culture there. And I've, had some really remarkable encounters in the Chogyal Zen
wow.
tradition there. Um, and Haeyong is doing MBSR in Korea in a really profoundly authentic way.
Mm.
And a lot of people, of course, take MBSR and they just claim to be MBSR teachers. They don't know the first thing about it. And and there's something in Korea called MBSRK for Korean, because they decided that it was too complicated. What real MBSR is too complicated for Koreans. I don't know how somebody knows that, but and so they made some kind of more cognitive behavioral distillation of it, which is not anything like what the real practice is. So how wonderful to connect like this. I mean, it sounds like you're in an incredibly sort of mm, challenging moment, because for one thing, you're stuck because of the pandemic between, your family and being here, and or part of your family. You have one child here. Okay, so you're not alone.
My Zen
Um,
master.
yeah, you're live-in Zen master. And so since we're all stuck in one way or another at this particular moment, uh, can we find ways to be creatively stuck and discover that not only are we not stuck, but this is a kind of incubation period, like,
Mm,
like a pregnancy,
mm,
where you're actually giving birth to yourself if you'll pardon my putting it that way, or something is giving birth to you beyond whatever the forces were that brought you to this moment. And I would say that's trustworthy. In my experience, that's always been trustworthy. Is it terrifying? Absolutely terrifying. And everybody who loves you will tell you you're making a big mistake. That's part
Yes.
of the evidence that you're not making a big mistake. Because people are attached to the projections of who you are rather than give you the space to actually be who you are in the mystery of not knowing and see what comes of that. That's the only way the world is going to change. Your world, my world, whatever worlds we're inhabiting. And that's what I mean when I say the world needs all its flowers. I mean, we need you to be who you need you to be. And if you can thread that needle, and I'm not saying it's easy, but the alternative is imprisonment of one kind or another, or in deadening. And we don't have time for that anymore, either on a personal family level or on a global, sort of geopolitical or, sort of environmental level. Humans just, we don't, that would be irresponsible, simply irresponsible. And what we need is to be responsible, able to, capable of responding mindfully rather than reacting mindlessly out of fear or the sense of I, me, and mine and delusion. I see that, you're getting exactly what I'm saying, and you would have you got it before I said it.
Oh my goodness. Just yeah, I'm I'm really grateful that you made it so approachable, something that's so ancient that I've been ignoring that I had ever I didn't even want to know it was in my culture, and
Right.
you made it so approachable that I had to come all the way to America to find out that I could have learned this somewhere if I had the mind to it. But this is all my journey, I guess.
Yeah, but you're not alone. I mean, Korean Zen, which is the only aspect of it that I know something about, that's also going through changes. And it turns out that a lot of them are actually interested in MBSR because it, in some sense, universalizes something that's hundreds and hundreds of years old in Korea, but also like that people have the wrong idea about.
Yes,
And they have
yes,
the wrong idea about it because the bureaucracy has given them the wrong idea. It's not
yes,
like they made it up.
yes.
So it's a kind of bi-directional fecundity that's feeding some kind of new emergence where it's always been about liberation. It's always been about liberation. Chinul, a great Korean Zen master from around the 8th century or something like that, or 12th century, I'm not sure. But Chinul's writings are as powerful today as they were when he wrote them. Uh, and they bear a lot of deep inquiry. And it's nothing separate from what we're doing here, mindfulness. There's not an angstrom of separation, but you can't get to it with the thinking mind. Even if you were a psychiatrist and a psychologist and a neuroscientist, you couldn't get anywhere close to it.
No, no.
Not that that stuff's not all beautiful in its own right, but it has to be integrated across multiple intelligences. And that's the kind of juncture that we're at on the planet where neuroscience and psychiatry and psychology and clinical medicine are understanding that uh, a certain kind of holism is required. That means seeing people as miraculous beings from the very beginning and realizing that we'll never know everything fully. And that's beautiful. And that not knowing and knowing that we don't know, that's profoundly therapeutic even, I think. you know, because it's not like now you're not going to lay some trip on somebody or fix them, to use your word. Yeah, medicine is so much about fixing what's broken, but you know, fixing is kind of a little bit like curing. There are very few cures in medicine, or this is psychiatry, even fewer. Okay, but healing always possible if your understanding of healing is, it's sort of my working definition of it is coming to terms with things as they are.
Mhm.
And that can happen in one moment. Come to terms with it, and then all of a sudden it's just like the poem. Uh, I've had the feeling my boat struck something down there in the depths, and then nothing's happened. Only maybe everything's happened. So we have to recognize that that in some sense the non-doing is really everything, because it is a doorway into being. And then out of being, we can do the doing in an entirely different way. And it will be more like love than like ego trip or some kind of professional drive to get some status.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh,
Pleasure meeting you.
yes. Oh,
Pleasure meeting you.
it's an honor, and I thank you so much, and Soren and John Bashu and all the community that have just made me learn about common humanity and the the word suffering and how we can hold it all together. And I'm gonna really take what you've told me to heart. And there are lots of suffering in the world, and I know I what I've left behind. There's a lot of suffering there too. So
Yeah.
I'll really study, or get into this in a more in depth and in a more heartful way, and maybe I can bring some of this back, some of what you've taught us back, and share it with people I love, and who needs it, or I don't know, maybe for free. I don't know.
Listen,
Anything.
whatever you wind up doing is going to be just the right thing. I can just feel that from you, that, you know, that you have that kind of integrity and caring. So, and trust in yourself to be brave and, you know, outside the box. And that's exactly the kind of mind frame. I think every single one of us on this call, people would have given this up months, weeks ago. I mean, how long have you been on this? Have you been
Yes,
joining us for
all through, all through.
all the,
Yeah,
so
all.
like, why would 1,000 people and then another 1,000 or so people on YouTube stay with it over this long
Mhm.
if it wasn't nurturing something really profound? I mean, you've got better things to be doing with this particular hour every day of the week. And yet here we are. And I'm pointing this out because it's not local. It's not in you and in me. It's in we. It's in all of us. And we're each kind of recognizing, I think, that to be who we really are, and to be free, to liberate ourselves from the craziness of our own minds and circumstances, that we really need to care deeply about living the life that's ours to lead, and not some caricature of it that we've synthesized in our thinking brains. Because that's kind of like in a way it's a certain kind of self-inflicted torture, the exact opposite of liberation. And then you blame circumstances or your parents or your culture or whatever it is for it. I'm not talking to you anymore. I'm talking for all of us, you know, wherever we are. And and what I've loved most about our weeks together, I I I don't think I've ever felt as understood in a teaching environment as I'm feeling now, and none of us are together. I mean, how is that possible? I feel more understood in this space, and I get more feedback that I'm not deluding myself, but that's actually true, than if I was sitting in front of 1,000 people in a room for 5 days or 7 days or 5 weeks for that matter. There's something remarkable going on here, and it is remarkable because every one of us has in some sense said yes and is continuing to say yes, including our friend Joseph, who's 12 years old, and other kids who are gravitating in whatever ways that they are, and sort of the entire spectrum of age and sort of every other aspect of how we humans are different from each other, and yet the heart beating in the chest is just astonishing how deeply interconnected we are, and we know it here at least. So thank you. Thank you, Helen.
Thank
Been
you.
a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you for your being. Thank you for just existing. I mean,
I can't help it.
Yeah, you're just you'll be in my heart forever and ever. And
Right
thank
back,
you
right
forever.
back at you. Okay.
Thank
And I think in all of our hearts. So wishing you all the best with the navigating the ups and downs of it all.
Thank you.
Yeah, and
Thank
stay safe too.
you. You too. Thank you.
See you tomorrow, or see whoever can come tomorrow. We'll see you tomorrow, and I'm handing it over to Soren.
Wonderful.
I love that we're in the timeless now.
Tomorrow also will be Thursday, so we'll be staying on for the Community Connection Hour. So just know that if you're watching us on YouTube or here on Zoom, you're welcome to do that. And now you can say goodbye in any and all languages and go to
Gracias.
Thank you. Bye.
Yes.
Very interesting discussion tomorrow.
So much fun with you.
Talk to you tomorrow.
Hasta luego.
Muchas gracias, lindo verlo.
Grazie John, grazie Soren.
Thank you, Soren.
Thank you, Joseph.
Everybody.